Imagine for a second that you went out and bought the most complex, high-performance piece of machinery in existence.
Okay.
Let's say it's a state-of-the-art fighter jet, or maybe a supercomputer that can simulate the entire universe. Something just capable of these incredible feats, massive output, a marvel of engineering.
I like where this is going. I'd love a fighter jet.
Right, who wouldn't? But there's a catch. You never bothered to read the manual. In fact, you just toss the manual in the trash the moment you open the box. So every single day, you're sitting there in the cockpit, mashing random buttons, just hoping it flies.
Oh, man.
And you're wondering why it keeps overheating, or, why it shuts down at the worst possible times, or why you're just taxiing around the runway instead of breaking the sound barrier.
That is a genuinely terrifying image. But, unfortunately, based on the stack of research we have in front of us today, that is a fairly accurate description of how most people navigate their entire existence.
It really is.
We are operating the most advanced biological technology on the planet, the human brain and body, without having the faintest idea how the software is written.
Exactly. And that is the whole premise of the deep dive we are embarking on today. We're looking at a stack of source material that effectively claims to be the technical manual for the human mind.
A user manual for being human.
And I have to say, right off the bat, just to set expectations, this is not your typical self-help book.
No, not even close.
It's not about positive affirmations. It's not about, manifesting your dreams or staring at a vision board, hoping the universe delivers a Ferrari.
Not at all. The documents we're analyzing are described explicitly as having no fluff and no toxic positivity. It's framed as a three-part system audit. It's technical. It's almost mechanical.
It is.
It treats the human being as a system to be optimized, not a spirit to be coddled.
It's a beast of a document. It breaks everything down into these 3 layers.
Yeah.
So part 1 is the internal architecture, basically the hardware and the software of your brain.
The nuts and bolts.
Part 2 is external applications, how you interface with society, wealth, status, power, all the external stuff.
The game, basically.
And part 3, which I have to say is my favorite, is tactics and defense. This is the biohacking and what the source actually calls the dark arts of optimization.
The dark arts.
Yeah.
It sounds so ominous, but as we went through the reading, it's really about understanding the hidden rules of the game, right?
Right.
The things that are happening under the surface.
It is. But I think we need to issue a bit of a warning to you, the listener, before we really get into the weeds here. This source material, it adopts a very brutal, very direct tone.
It does. It's not polite. It doesn't pull any punches.
It essentially says, I don't care about your feelings. I care about evolutionary biology.
That's the key. I mean, that's the central thesis here. We are biological machines first and floating spirits second. And the machine has rules. If you ignore gravity, you fall. If you ignore your neurobiology, you fail.
Yeah.
The source warns us that it doesn't care if the truth is uncomfortable. It only cares if it works. It's all based on data, evolutionary psychology, and biochemistry.
Right. So our mission today is to act as impartial observers. We're just going to unpack these protocols to see how the machine actually runs. We want to give you a way to perform a kind of system audit on your own life.
A diagnostic check.
Exactly. We're going to go from the absolute biological basics all the way to advanced social engineering and financial strategy. So buckle up.
Let's pop the hood.
Okay, let's start with section 1, the hardware. The core concept here, and this is something that I think most of us intellectually know, but emotionally we just ignore, is the idea of evolutionary mismatch.
This is the foundation of everything else we're going to discuss today. I really believe that. If you don't get this, the rest of the tactics won't make sense.
Why is it so foundational?
Because the source argues that your mind, this thing you think of as you, is just an emergent property of your brain's chemistry. If the chemistry is off, the mind is off. It's not some separate magical entity. It's biological.
And the hardest pill to swallow here is the quote, evolution does not care about your happiness.
It doesn't. And it is a strangely liberating realization if you really let it sink in. Your brain was not designed to make you happy.
Oh.
It wasn't designed to make you productive at your 9-to-5 job. It certainly wasn't designed to make you self-actualized or, living your best life.
Yeah.
It was designed for exactly 2 things, survival and energy conservation. Period.
So all these feelings we have,
Right.
when we feel anxious or we feel lazy or we just focus on the negative all the time, that's not us being broken.
No. That is the machine doing exactly what it was built to do in a savanna environment 50,000 years ago.
Okay.
In that environment, being happy and content was actually dangerous. Think about it. If you're the early human who is just sitting around smiling at the sunset, totally blissed out,
You're not watching for the lion in the tall grass.
you're not watching for the lion. The paranoid, anxious human survived. The happy, relaxed human got eaten. We are the descendants of the paranoid ones.
That explains so much. It really does. Let's look at the threat detection aspect of this. The source uses a really relatable example here. It says you can get 20 compliments in a day. Hey, nice shirt, great job on that report, you look great today. But if one person insults you,
Or just leaves a slightly nasty comment on your social media post.
right, which one do you remember when you're trying to fall asleep that night?
Oh, the insult. Every single time. It's not even a contest.
I can still remember a mean comment from high school, but I couldn't tell you what my best friend said to me yesterday. Why does it have such a tight grip on us?
It's all about the cost of error. A compliment is low-stakes data, biologically speaking. Doesn't really help you survive a predator or a famine. It's nice, sure, but it's irrelevant to immediate survival.
It's fluff.
It's fluff. An insult, however, an insult might signal a loss of status. And if you're in a small tribe of, say, 50 people, a loss of status could mean expulsion from the group.
And historically, expulsion meant death. You couldn't survive alone out there.
Exactly. So the brain tags the insult as potential life-threatening data. It gets a red flag.
So our hardware is literally wired to fixate on the negative because the negative is what kills you. The positive is it's just icing on the cake.
Correct. So in our modern world, this manifests as anxiety, or what psychologists call rumination. You replay that awkward conversation from the meeting over and over and over because your brain thinks your life depends on fixing it. You aren't crazy, you're just running ancient software in a modern environment.
And then there's the other side of that coin, energy conservation. The source basically calls us biologically lazy, which I have to admit felt a bit personal at first.
I think it does for everyone.
Yeah.
But it's not an attack on your character. It's a statement on your metabolism. Thinking is expensive, like calorically expensive.
Oh.
The brain is only about 2% of your body weight, but it consumes roughly 20% of your body's glucose and oxygen. It is a massive energy hog.
So the body is actively trying to limit how much we use it to save fuel?
Exactly. Your body treats energy like money in a bank account during a recession. It doesn't want to spend it unless it absolutely has to.
Yeah.
So the brain is constantly seeking what are called heuristics, which are just mental shortcuts, to avoid doing the heavy lifting of critical thought.
Autopilot.
Total autopilot. If it can run a pre-written script instead of thinking from scratch, it will.
Yeah.
And that manifests as what we call laziness, procrastination, or cognitive bias. It's just your brain trying to save calories for potential famine that is, for most of us, never coming.
This leads us to what I thought was one of the most powerful sections, the mind over matter fallacy. I highlighted the sentence 3 times. You cannot psychologize a physiological problem.
This is where most self-help fails. And it's where people beat themselves up completely unnecessarily.
Okay, unpack that for us. What does it mean that we can't psychologize a physiological problem? Give me an example.
Okay, a perfect example is sleep deprivation. Imagine you've had a rough week. You're only getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. Physiologically, your prefrontal cortex, that's the part of the brain right behind your forehead that handles logic, reason, willpower, complex planning.
The CEO of the brain, the adult in the room.
The adult in the room, exactly. That part of your brain literally goes offline. It's like battery-saving mode on your phone. All the fancy, energy-intensive features get turned off first to save the core functions.
So the adult leaves the room.
The adult leaves the building. And who's left in charge? The amygdala, the fear and aggression center.
The toddler.
The toddler, the animal, the reactive emotional part of you.
So if I'm in that state, I'm sleep deprived, my amygdala is driving the bus, and I try to mindset my way out of it. I tell myself, just be positive, you can do this.
You're wasting your time. You are literally wasting your breath. You cannot meditate your prefrontal cortex back online if it has no fuel. You can't use an affirmation to fix a glucose crash.
It's a hardware problem.
It's a hardware problem. You don't need a life coach in that moment. You need a sandwich and a nap. You have to fix the hardware before you can even think about running the software.
Speaking of which, let's get into the specific protocols for the hardware. Because the source is extremely prescriptive about these biological basics. It treats them like maintenance requirements for a high-performance car.
And the first one, no surprise, is sleep. And I know everyone says get more sleep. It's boring advice. We've all heard it. But the source frames this as non-negotiable cognitive damage control.
It's not about feeling rested.
No, it's about cleaning the machine. This is where it gets fascinating. The source mentions a mechanism called the glymphatic system. Have you heard of this?
I hadn't until I read this material. It's pretty incredible.
It's relatively recent science. We all know the body has a lymphatic system to clear out waste and toxins from our muscles and organs. Well, the brain has its own version, the glymphatic system. But here's the kicker. It only turns on when you are in deep sleep.
Really? Only in deep sleep.
Only then. Your brain cells literally shrink slightly to create more space between them, and then cerebrospinal fluid rushes through and washes away all the metabolic waste that built up during the day. Specifically, it clears out these things called amyloid plaques.
And those are the things linked to Alzheimer's, right?
That's the running theory. So if you don't get enough deep sleep, you are not washing your brain. It's that simple.
So you're literally waking up with a brain full of dirty dishwater.
Exactly. And the source mentions a stat that I found genuinely terrifying.
Yeah.
Being away for 20 hours is functionally equivalent to being legally drunk.
Wow.
Think about that. We've all seen people at the office bragging about pulling an all-nighter to finish a project.
I'm on the ground.
I'm on the grind. What they're really saying is, I showed up to work today, legally intoxicated, and I'm going to make terrible decisions.
So trying to work while you're that tired is like trying to work after 6 shots of tequila.
It is. Your reaction time slows down, your emotional regulation completely evaporates, your cognitive processing speed just tanks, you are operating the machine at maybe 60% capacity, and you are burning out the engine. It's bad strategy.
Okay, so sleep is non-negotiable. The source is also very specific about light. And this isn't just get some sun. It's about timing and intensity.
This is all about the circadian rhythm. We have a master clock in our brain. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And it needs to be set every single day, like an old watch. The trigger for that clock is photons light, energy hitting special cells in your retina.
And it has to be morning light specifically.
Yes. The protocol is very clear. You need to view sunlight within 30 to 60 minutes of waking up. And here's the technical nuance that most people miss. It needs to be outdoor light.
Why? I mean, if I have a bright window or I turn on all the lights or I use one of those ring lights, isn't that enough?
It's actually not even close. This is about a measurement called lux, the intensity of the light.
Okay.
Even on a really cloudy, overcast day, being outside is going to give you maybe 10,000 to 50,000 lux. Inside, even with bright office lights, you're getting maybe 500 lux. It's a logarithmic scale. Your brain needs that intense blast of photons to trigger a healthy cortisol spike.
Hang on, I thought cortisol was the stress hormone. Don't we want to avoid that?
This is a huge misconception. Chronic, background, all-day cortisol is terrible for you. That's chronic stress. But an acute, sharp cortisol spike first thing in the morning is essential. It's a go signal.
It wakes you up.
So it wakes up your system.
Yeah.
It puts your immune system on alert. And this is the magic part. It starts a countdown timer for the release of melatonin 12 to 14 hours later.
So if you have trouble falling asleep at night,
The problem might actually be that you didn't get enough bright light in your eyes that morning. You never started the timer. So your body has no idea that it's supposed to be winding down when you finally hit the pillow.
that's wild. It's such a simple mechanical fix to a problem that people throw so much money at.
Simple, but incredibly effective. And the third pillar of the hardware is glucose, fuel.
This is the spike and crash dynamic that so many of us are familiar with.
The brain runs almost exclusively on glucose, but it hates volatility. It wants a slow, steady supply. If you eat a donut or a sugary cereal or a bagel for breakfast, you are flooding the system with sugar.
You feel great for a bit.
You feel great for about 20 minutes. You get a huge spike in energy and focus. But then your pancreas dumps a massive amount of insulin into your blood to clear that sugar out, and you crash. You don't just go back to baseline, you drop below baseline.
And when you crash, that prefrontal cortex we talked about, it just flickers out again.
It goes offline. Your willpower completely evaporates. You get hangry. You can't focus. You suddenly crave another hit of sugar to get back up.
The dreaded 3 p.m. slump.
That's it exactly. The source recommends a high-protein, high-fat breakfast to keep that glucose curve flat and stable. Think of it like putting a slow-burning log on the fire versus throwing a cup of gasoline on it. You want the slow burn to sustain cognitive load throughout the day.
Okay, so that's the hardware. We've got the machine plugged in with sleep, we've set the clock with light, and we've put the right fuel in the tank with glucose. But a computer with great hardware is useless if the operating system is full of bugs and viruses.
Which brings us to section 2. The operating system, specifically dopamine, and the ego.
This section starts with a bit of a controversial take, I thought. The source basically attacks the entire concept of motivation,
It calls motivation a myth, or at least a trap.
which feels really harsh. I mean, I rely on motivation. I watch a Rocky montage, I get pumped up, I go to the gym. What's so wrong with that?
The problem isn't the feeling itself. The problem is the reliability. Motivation is an emotion. And like all emotions, it is transient. It's fickle. It comes and goes like the weather.
So you can't count on it.
You can't count on it.
Yeah.
If you only do the work when you feel motivated, you are, by definition, an amateur. You are building your house on sand.
Ouch. So what's the alternative then? What do the pros do?
The source argues that high performers, elite athletes, top CEOs, surgeons, they don't have more motivation than you. They have better systems.
They have discipline.
They have discipline. They do the work regardless of how they feel. They completely dissociate the action from the feeling. They act, and then sometimes the feeling of motivation follows, but they don't wait for it.
This ties directly into the whole dopamine discussion and this concept of the dopamine baseline. I think this is probably the most relevant thing for anyone living in the modern digital age.
It is the plague of the modern age. We are drowning in cheap, easily accessible dopamine, and it's ruining our ability to do anything meaningful.
Explain the mechanism here. What exactly is cheap dopamine and why is it so dangerous?
Okay, so dopamine is often called the pleasure molecule, but that's not quite right. It's more the molecule of drive and craving. It's what makes you want to do things.
Okay.
Now, there is a balance in the brain. You can think of it like a teeter-totter or a seesaw. Pleasure on one side, pain on the other. Your brain works very, very hard to keep that teeter-totter perfect level. That's a state called homeostasis.
Balance.
Balance. When you scroll TikTok or eat a bag of chips or watch porn or play a video game, you are slamming down on the pleasure side of that seesaw. You get a massive, unnatural spike of dopamine. But, and this is a fundamental law of the universe, what goes up must come down.
Right.
To restore balance, the brain doesn't just go back to level. It swings hard to the side of pain.
That's the come down.
That's the come down, the hangover. But with digital addiction, it's much more subtle than a drug hangover. It just feels like boredom. It feels like a lack of drive. It feels like mild depression. The source calls this a dopamine deficit state.
I think everyone listening has felt this. You spend 2 hours scrolling on a Saturday morning, and when you finally put the phone down, you don't feel rested or happy. You feel gross. You feel lethargic and empty.
You've fried your reward circuits, you've flooded the engine, and now normal, healthy things like reading a book or going for a walk or doing the dishes or working on that important spreadsheet, they feel impossibly boring.
They can't compete.
They can't compete. Your brain is now calibrated for high speed, high novelty, high dopamine entertainment. So reality, in comparison, feels slow and painful.
So how do we fix it? How do we recalibrate? The source suggests dopamine fasting.
It's a hard reset. You have to
Yeah.
endure the boredom. You have to intentionally cut out all the high stimulation inputs, no phone, no Netflix, no junk food, no music. Usually for 24 hours, you just have to let that teeter-totter slowly level out.
That sounds genuinely painful.
It is painful. That's the withdrawal. That feeling of pain and boredom is the teeter-totter resetting itself. But the magic is, after the reset, the boring work becomes interesting again.
Because the baseline has recovered.
Your baseline is recovered. A walk outside feels stimulating again. Reading a book is engaging again. You've restored your natural sensitivity.
To help with that on a daily basis, the source talks about friction design. This is such a tactical gem for anyone trying to build good habits or break bad ones.
It is. We like to think we are these creatures of incredible willpower, but we are really just creatures of convenience. If you want to stop doing something, don't just try harder. That's a losing strategy. Make it physically harder to do.
Increase the friction?
You have to increase the friction. If you're addicted to checking your phone in bed, don't charge it by your bed, charge in the kitchen. That single act adds, 10 seconds of friction?
But that's enough to break the loop.
It's enough to break the autopilot loop. It forces your prefrontal cortex to wake up and ask, wait, do I really want to get out of my warm bed and walk to the kitchen, or am I just bored?
And conversely, you decrease friction for the good stuff. You make the good habits the path of least resistance.
Exactly. If you want to go running in the morning, sleep in your running clothes. Put your shoes right by the bed. Have your water bottle filled. You want to make it so that it's actually easier to go for the run than to not go. You are essentially hacking your own laziness.
And if you're still stuck in procrastination, the source offers the 5-minute rule.
This is for when the resistance is really heavy. The brain's pain is in the anticipation of the task, not the task itself. We dread the idea of starting the huge project.
The activation energy.
That's it. It's the activation energy. But if you just make a deal with yourself to do it for only 5 minutes, usually the friction disappears once you start. You just need to break the static friction. It's a law of physics. It takes more force to start an object moving than to keep it moving.
Let's pivot to the software bugs, the cognitive distortions. The source makes this fascinating point that smart people are actually more susceptible to some of these.
Especially confirmation bias. The source argues that smart people aren't necessarily better at finding the truth. They're just better at building elaborate rationalizations for why they are right.
So you're just using your big brain to find evidence that confirms what you already believe.
Exactly. It's an ego defense mechanism disguised as logic. It feels like you're thinking, but you're actually just reinforcing your own biases.
And then there's the spotlight effect. This one is so liberating when you finally internalize it.
It really is. We walk around thinking everyone is watching us. We're the main character in our own movie, so we assume everyone else is watching it too. Oh no, I have a tiny stain on my shirt, or everyone saw me trip on the curb.
Everyone at the gym is judging my form.
Right. And the brutal, beautiful truth is no one is watching you. No one cares because they're all too busy worrying about who is watching them. They're the main character in their own movie.
It's the main character syndrome, and the protocol in the source is to actively kill it. Just realize you aren't the star of the movie. You're just an extra in everyone else's movie. It takes so much pressure off.
And that leads directly into emotional regulation.
Hmm.
The source quotes Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. He talked about the gap.
Between stimulus and response, there is a space.
And in that space lies our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
It's beautiful.
It is. Most of us live with no gap. We are reactive animals. Stimulus happens. Reaction happens.
Yeah.
Someone cuts you off in traffic. You scream and lay on the horn. The goal of a mature human is to widen that gap. Stimulus, pause, choice action.
But how do we physically widen it in the moment? The source gives some specific techniques. One is labeling.
Right, this comes from some great neuroscience out of UCLA. When you feel a strong emotion, your amygdala, the emotional reactive brain, is lighting up like a Christmas tree. If you can put a word to it, specifically naming the emotion, I feel humiliated, or I feel envious, or I feel anxious, something amazing happens.
What happens?
Activity in the amygdala actually decreases, and activity in the prefrontal cortex, the logical brain, increases.
So by simply saying, I am angry, you actually become measurably less angry.
Yes, you move the processing from the emotional part of your brain to the logical part. You are observing the feeling rather than being the feeling. You're objectifying it, and that gives you power over it.
And there's a breathing technique mentioned too, the physiological sigh. This is described as a hardware override for stress.
I use this every single day. It's the fastest known way to voluntarily reduce your autonomic arousal, which is the fancy way of saying calm down.
So how does it work?
It's very specific. It involves 2 sharp inhales through the nose, 1 big one, and then a tiny little top-up inhale right after to fully inflate the lungs, followed by 1 long, slow, extended exhale through the mouth.
2 ins, 1 long out. What does that do mechanically in the body?
So the double inhale pops open the alveoli, the little air sacs in your lungs that have collapsed. This maximizes the surface area for gas exchange. Then the long, slow exhale offloads the maximum amount of carbon dioxide. And getting rid of that CO2 signals the vagus nerve to slow the heart rate down. It's like a built-in panic button for your nervous system.
Okay, moving on to section 3, learning and resilience. We're constantly told to be lifelong learners, but the source suggests most of us are doing it completely wrong.
We are. We mistake reviewing for learning.
Yeah.
Reading a book and highlighting it feels productive. It feels like learning, but it's often just passive consumption. The source is adamant about this. If you are comfortable, you are not learning.
Learning requires failure and agitation.
It requires agitation. That sounds so counterintuitive, doesn't it? We think we learn best when we're relaxed and happy and in a flow state.
Right.
But according to the science of neuroplasticity, to actually rewire the brain, to change the synaptic connections, you need a very specific neurochemical cocktail. You need acetylcholine, which is for focus. But you also need epinephrine adrenaline for alertness. And when is epinephrine released?
During stress, during frustration.
During frustration. So that feeling of, oh, I can't figure this out, I'm so stupid, I hate this, that's actually the chemical signal that learning is about to happen.
That's the gate.
That's the gatekeeper. That frustration is your brain screaming, okay, what we're doing isn't working, I need to change the circuitry. Most people quit right there because it feels bad. But that's the exact moment you need to lean in and push through.
The source also suggests a method called the Feynman technique to test whether you've actually learned something or just memorized it.
Named after the brilliant physicist Richard Feynman. The rule is simple. You can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you don't really understand it.
It forces you to simplify.
It forces you to strip away all the jargon and the complex terminology. If you have to rely on big words to explain something, you're probably hiding gaps in your own knowledge. True mastery is simplicity.
This section also talks about voluntary hardship, this idea that modern life is, in a way, too soft for our own good.
We lack physical struggle. We don't hunt for our food. We don't build our own shelters. We don't fight off predators. So our brain, which is fundamentally a problem-solving machine, has no real problems to solve.
So it invents them.
It invents drama. It freaks out about a passive-aggressive email from a coworker or a weird comment on social media because it has no lions to run from. It's desperate for a challenge.
So the solution is to introduce controlled voluntary suffering.
Yes. Cold showers, intense exercise, fasting, learning a difficult skill, doing things you hate doing. And here's where it gets really interesting scientifically. There's a specific area in the brain called the anterior midcingulate cortex, or the AMCC.
I've read about this. It's being called the seat of willpower or the grit center of the brain.
It is. Neuroscientists have found that this brain area is measurably larger and thicker in elite athletes, special forces soldiers, and people who live exceptionally long lives, so-called superagers. But here's the catch. It only grows when you do things you do not want to do.
Oh, wait, so if I love running and I go for a run every day, my AMCC doesn't grow from that.
Correct. Because there was no internal friction to overcome. It grows when you're on that run and every cell in your body is screaming, stop, and you choose to push for another minute. It's the resistance that builds the muscle.
So the protocol is literally do one thing you hate every single day, not for the result of the thing itself, but just to build that hardware in your brain.
Think of it as going to the gym for your willpower. You are building resilience as a skill.
I love that. Okay, so we've optimized the internal machine, we fixed the hardware, debugged the OS, upgraded the learning protocols. Now let's look outward. Section 4, external applications, social dynamics, and status. This is where the source gets a little Machiavellian.
It gets realistic about our primate nature. The source argues that we live in a dominance hierarchy, whether we like it or not, and that our neurochemistry, specifically serotonin, tracks our perceived status within that hierarchy.
And it draws a really sharp distinction between being nice and being kind.
The rabbit versus the lion. This is a very powerful metaphor.
Explain it.
A rabbit is nice. It's harmless. It doesn't attack anyone. But it's nice because it has no claws, no fangs. It has no choice but to be harmless. That is an immoral virtue. That's just incompetence. A lion, on the other hand, has claws and fangs. A lion is dangerous. But if a lion chooses not to use his claws, that is kindness.
So true kindness requires the capacity for harm.
Exactly. You need to be formidable first, then you can choose to be kind. If you are harmless, you aren't virtuous. You're just weak. You need to integrate your shadow, your capacity for danger, to be truly respected and to be genuinely good.
The source then lists some very specific nonverbal signals of status. Eye contact was a big one.
It's one of the most primitive signals we have. Breaking eye contact first is a universal submission signal in the animal kingdom. It says, I am lower status than you. You are the dominant one.
But staring is aggression.
Right, so you don't want to have a death stare. The soft gaze is the power move. It's unwavering, but it's relaxed. It signals, I'm not afraid of you, but I'm also not attacking you. I am your equal.
And what about space and time?
High-status individuals take up space. They are expansive. They have open body language. Low-status individuals shrink. They cross their legs. They hunch their shoulders. They try to literally disappear. It's all primitive, but we all read these signals subconsciously within milliseconds of meeting someone.
And controlling time.
High status controls the tempo of an interaction. Rushing to answer a question signals low value. It signals eagerness to please. Taking a moment, a deliberate pause before you answer, shows that you are in control.
Which brings us to the power of no.
This is a huge one for people pleasers. The source is very clear. When you say no, do not explain yourself. No, I can't make it. Full stop. End the sentence there.
But the urge to say, no, I can't because my car broke down and my cat is sick and I have a headache, is so incredibly strong.
And that's the trap. Every explanation you give is a hook for the other person to argue with you. If you say, I can't because my car broke down, they can immediately say, oh, that's no problem, I'll pick you up. And now you're trapped in your own lie.
Whereas a naked no is unarguable.
It's a naked display of boundaries. It's a high-status move. It signals that your time and energy belong to you, and you allocate them as you see fit.
That plays directly into frame control. Can you explain what a frame is in this context?
A frame is essentially the reality you are operating in. It's the lens through which you see an interaction. Every interaction is a collision of realities, a collision of frames, and typically the stronger frame wins.
The source categorizes three main frames: moral, practical, and power. The trap is when someone attacks you in one frame and you defend in another.
That's where you lose every time.
Give us a concrete example. Let's say I'm in a business negotiation.
Okay, let's say a potential client says, you're charging way too much for this project. That's unethical given how easy this probably is for you. That is a moral frame attack. They are trying to make you a bad, greedy person.
And my natural instinct is to defend myself by saying, well, actually, I have a lot of overheads, and I spent years learning this skill, and it takes more time than you think.
And you just lost the interaction. You defended with a practical frame, facts and logic, against their moral frame. You immediately sound defensive and weak. You've accepted their premise that you need to justify your value.
So how do I win that frame battle?
You either reject their frame or you overpower it with your own. You could respond by holding your frame and saying, my prices are based on the value I provide, not the time it takes. If you're looking for the cheapest option, we might not be the right fit. You reestablish your own frame of value and authority.
And the pause. That was another tactic mentioned for controlling the frame.
It's a 3-second pause. It's so simple, but so powerful. When someone asks you a difficult question or makes a ridiculous offer in a negotiation, just wait. Say nothing for 3 full seconds.
That feels like an eternity in a conversation.
It does. It creates massive social tension. Most people are terrified of silence, so they rush to fill it. They start talking. They start negotiating with themselves. The person who is most comfortable with that silence wins the interaction almost every time.
It's amazing how much of this just boils down to being comfortable with tension and awkwardness.
That's the definition of confidence, isn't it? Confidence is the ability to tolerate social pressure without breaking your own frame.
Okay, let's move this into the workplace. Section 5, Corporate Warfare and Wealth Psychology. The source brings up this model called the Gervais Principle. This blew my mind.
It's a very cynical but strangely effective model of how organizations actually work. It breaks employees down into 3 layers: sociopaths, the clueless, and losers. And the definitions are not what you think.
Right, loser here isn't an insult, it's more of an economic classification.
Correct. So at the very top, you have the sociopaths. These are the executives, the C-suite, the VPs. They drive the company. They have no real empathy for the organization itself or its mission. They are playing a game of power to win for themselves. They deal in leverage and politics.
And the clueless are in the middle?
The clueless are middle management. They're called clueless because they actually believe the mission statement on the wall. They lack political intelligence. They think if they just work hard and follow the rules, they will be rewarded. They're the ones who get stressed out, do all the busy work, and eventually get burned out. They're essentially buffers between the sociopaths at the top and the losers at the bottom.
And the losers are at the bottom.
The losers are the rank-and-file workers. They have lost the game of corporate climbing, but in doing so, they have gained their freedom. They do the bare minimum required to not get fired, but they focus their real energy and passion on their lives outside of work, their family, their hobbies, their side hustle.
And the source argues they're actually the economically smartest group of the 3.
It's a provocative argument, but it makes sense. They aren't trading their entire soul and all their waking hours for a promotion that probably isn't coming. They have made a clear, rational economic transaction. I will give you an average amount of my time and energy, and you will give me a predictable paycheck.
That is a wildly different way to look at slacking off. It frames it as a conscious energy allocation strategy.
It is. And the key defense strategy the source offers is to just not be clueless. Don't overinvest emotionally in a corporation that would replace you in a week if you drop dead. Document everything. Be a gray rock to narcissistic bosses. Never outshine the master.
Speaking of economics, let's talk about wealth mechanics. The source quotes Naval Ravikant extensively regarding the concept of leverage.
The hard truth here, and it's a tough one for many people to accept, is this. You cannot save your way to wealth by renting out your time. Your time is finite. You only have 24 hours in a day. To get truly wealthy, you need leverage. You need to detach your inputs from your outputs.
It lists 4 types of leverage: labor, capital, code, and media.
Right. Labor's having people work for you, but that's hard to manage and comes with a lot of headaches. Capital's having money work for you, but you need to have a lot of money to start. But code and media, that's the holy grail of the modern age.
Because they possess what the source calls permissionless leverage.
Exactly. You don't need anyone's permission to write a piece of code or start a YouTube channel or record a deep dive like this one. And more importantly, they work for you while you sleep. If you write one piece of software, it can be sold to one person or to 1 million people. The marginal cost of replication is 0. That's infinite leverage.
And then there's the math of Price's law. This is another terrifying one.
Price's law, or Price's square root law, states that in any creative or productive organization, the square root of the number of people produces 50% of the total value.
Let's run the numbers on that because it's pretty staggering.
Okay, if you have a company with 10 employees, the square root is about 3. So 3 people do half the work. The other 7 do the other half. Okay, manageable. But if you have a company with 100 employees, the square root is 10. So 10 people do half the work. The other 90 people are doing the rest.
It explains why big companies are so inefficient and slow.
It measures how incompetence scales. But the personal takeaway for you is you want to be in that square root. You want to be one of the critical few who are actually moving the needle because that's where all the leverage and security and compensation is.
Let's move on to Section 6, Strategic Life Design. The source introduces the ODA loop.
This comes from Colonel John Boyd, a legendary fighter pilot and military strategist. ODA stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. It's a decision-making cycle. But the key isn't just doing the steps, it's the speed at which you cycle through the loop.
Speed is the weapon.
Exactly. In a dogfight, or in business, or in life, things change fast. If you can observe a change in the environment, orient yourself to that new reality, make a decision, and act faster than your opponent, you win. You get inside their loop. By the time they're reacting to your last move, you're already 2 moves ahead.
And inversion. This is a problem-solving technique that was popularized by Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner.
It's so powerful. Instead of asking, how do I succeed? You invert the question and ask, how could I guarantee failure?
So, if I want to guarantee I have a miserable, unhealthy, broke life, what would I do? Well, I'd get terrible sleep, eat junk food all day, hang out with negative people who complain constantly, never read a book, and spend more money than I earn.
It's a pretty clear list, isn't it? Now, the path to success is simple. Just don't do those things. It's often much easier to avoid stupidity than it is to strive for brilliance. If you just systematically remove the guaranteed failure points from your life, you will automatically drift toward success.
Now, we have to touch on relationships and what the source calls the mating market. The source claims to be neutral here, just reporting on evolutionary drivers.
It does. It gets into some pretty controversial concepts like hypergamy and polygyny. It claims that, evolutionarily speaking, women are generally attracted to status and competence, which is hypergamy, the drive to mate up, while men are generally attracted to youth and fertility cues.
And again, the source's whole frame is, this relies on biology, not feelings. It's not saying what should be, but what is based on our long evolutionary history.
Right. And the advice that comes from this is very practical. It critiques the common just be yourself advice. It says that's terrible advice if yourself is currently lazy, unkempt, and boring. You should strive to be your best self. You have to actually compete in the marketplace.
And the concept of defined standards is key.
This is crucial. You need non-negotiables. You need to know what you want and what you will not tolerate. If you don't have standards, you operate from a scarcity mindset. You'll cling to the first person who shows you any interest at all. An abundance mindset comes from knowing your own value and being willing to walk away if a situation doesn't meet your standards.
Okay, we're heading into the final stretch. Section 7, Advanced Tactics and Biooptimization. This is the dark arts section. Let's start with something that sounds absolutely crazy. Mouth taping.
It sounds like a hostage situation, doesn't it? But it's actually elite physiology. The source suggests literally taping your mouth shut while you sleep using gentle surgical tape.
Why on earth would anyone do that?
To force nasal breathing. Most of us are chronic mouth breathers, especially at night. When you breathe through your mouth, you offload carbon dioxide too quickly.
But isn't CO2 a waste product? Don't we want to get rid of it?
That is the massive misconception. You need a certain level of CO2 in your blood for your body to be able to release oxygen into your cells. It's a phenomenon called the Bohr effect.
Okay, explain that.
Oxygen travels through your blood bound to hemoglobin molecules. But the hemoglobin won't let go of the oxygen and deliver it to your brain and muscles unless CO2 is present. CO2 is the key that unlocks the oxygen.
So if I mouth breathe all night and blow off all my CO2,
Your blood can be saturated with oxygen, but your brain and muscles are literally suffocating. You are starving your cells of oxygen while breathing plenty of air. It leads to brain fog, anxiety, poor sleep.
that is mind-blowing. So mouth taping keeps the CO2 levels up, which improves oxygen delivery throughout the body.
Yes, it leads to deeper sleep, better recovery, higher focus the next day, and less anxiety. Anxiety, physiologically, is often linked to a low tolerance for CO2.
And on the tech side of things, the source suggests grayscale.
Simple, powerful hack. Go into your phone's accessibility settings and turn the screen to black and white. It completely strips the dopamine rewards from the device.
How so?
Those colorful red notification badges, the bright icons, they are designed by behavioral psychologists to trigger your brain like a ripe piece of fruit. It's a primal trigger. If the phone is gray, it becomes a tool again, not a toy. It breaks the addiction spell almost instantly.
Let's talk negotiation. The source references tactical empathy and the Ackerman model. This is a very specific protocol for bargaining.
It is. It's a system, not just winging it. Let's say you're negotiating a salary or the price of a car. The model suggests you don't just throw out random numbers. You have a plan. You start by offering 65% of your target price. Then you make subsequent offers of 85%, then 95%, and then your final offer is 100%.
And the final number should be a weird, specific number, right?
Yes. Don't say, I can pay $12,000. Say, my absolute final offer is $12,350.
Why the precision?
Round numbers feel like estimates. They feel like they have room to move. Precise numbers sound calculated. It implies to the other person that you have done all the math and you are at your absolute hard limit. It psychologically stops them from pushing further because it feels like a hard, immovable edge.
And the magic question.
How am I supposed to do that? When someone gives you an unreasonable demand, I need this entire report done by tomorrow morning, you don't fight them. You don't get angry. You just ask, gently and calmly, how am I supposed to do that?
What does that do?
It's a beautiful move. It forces them to solve your problem. It engages their empathy and their problem-solving skills. They have to stop and look at the situation from your perspective in order to answer the question. The verbal judo move.
Okay, we've covered the hardware, the software, the social dynamics, the tactics. How do we wrap this all up? The outro focuses on some really heavy philosophical anchors.
It ends with anti-fragility. This is a concept from the writer Nassim Taleb. It goes beyond resilience. Resilience is resisting a shock and staying the same, like a rock in a storm. Anti-fragility is getting better because of the shock. Like a hydra from mythology, you cut off one head and two grow back in its place.
You want to use chaos as fuel.
Exactly. You want to structure your life in a way that mistakes, volatility, and chaos actually make you stronger, not weaker.
And the concept of amorphonaut, love your fate.
And this is key. Not just bearing your fate. Not just tolerating it, loving it. Whatever happens, you embrace it as if you chose it. You lose your job? Good. You were stagnating in that role anyway. Now you have an opportunity. You get injured, you can't go to the gym. Good. Now you can focus on reading and mental fortitude. If you truly love whatever happens, you cannot be defeated. You become unstoppable because your greatest enemy, bad luck, is actually your greatest teacher.
The source ends with a final thought experiment, the deathbed audit.
It asks you to imagine you are on your deathbed, looking back at your life. You ask yourself what you regret. You won't be worried about that awkward email you sent in 2026. You won't worry about what your neighbor thought of your car. You won't worry about being rejected.
What will you worry about?
You will worry that you didn't swing hard enough. You will worry that you played it too safe. You will worry about all the potential that died inside you because you were too scared to let it out.
The danger is not in failing. The danger is in living a life so careful that you might as well have been dead the whole time.
That is the line that stays with me from this entire body of work.
So here is the final call to action. The source explicitly forbids just listening to this and doing nothing.
Information without execution is just entertainment. It's mental masturbation. The rule is pick one thing, just one single thing we talked about today.
Maybe it's taping your mouth tonight before bed. Maybe it's going into your phone settings right now and turning it to grayscale. Maybe it's calculating your personal burn rate to see how much financial freedom you actually have. Maybe it's just practicing the physiological sigh the next time you feel stressed.
Whatever it is, do it immediately. Close the loop. Prove to yourself that you are the operator of the machine, not just a passive, helpless passenger.
We've given you the manual. Now it's time to actually fly the jet.
Get to work.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.